Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Leitinger, and today I'm joined by Jack Leche. Before we start this episode, let me talk a few seconds about my sponsor, Reband. If you haven't heard me talk about their knee pads, trust me, they're really good. I've seen a lot of them at their most recent Vienna Calling again, and I think everyone who's tried them is pretty much happy about them. So definitely check them out. Go to reband.com, and with the code Lightinger10 you get 10% off. And so they have a lot of other stuff as well, like tape and braces. So if you are a little broken from playing dodgeball, they're definitely a site that might be worth to check out. And so let's jump into the episode with Jack Leche. He's a player for the England Lions, also for Leamington Spartans, and most recently I played him with his team Hit Happens at Vienna Calling, and before that with Second Wind, I think, and Mosh Monsters at UDO. So Jack's a very accomplished player. He's played in Euros in Limerick in the summer and came second in the men's and the mixed, and he has a very unique playing style, and I thought it would be nice to get a chat. So Jack, without any further ado, tell me a little bit about yourself and your dodgeball journey this far.
So I'm 28 at the moment, and when I was in uni, and I was starting out in playing games and stuff, I'd always played competitive games, but when I was at uni and just before that, really, I played competitive Counter-Strike to quite a high level. But afterwards, when I'd graduated uni and started looking for a job, it just took too much time. You'd have to spend like 8 hours a day to remain competitive. So after COVID, I moved into dodgeball, and from that point, I just aimed for England, and it's kind of been upwards ever since. I've utilised everything I learned in Counter-Strike to learn in dodgeball as well, and it's kind of been a pretty solid path so far.
All right, so directly from aiming and shooting to aiming and shooting, but like, what's the transition period? What kind of athletic background do you have? Because it's still a little bit different from gaming to playing dodgeball, apart from the time you spend.
I've always been fairly athletic, so I've always played football and badminton and enjoyed any kind of sport, really. But I'd never really taken a focus to anything besides football when I was younger. And then when I've been playing dodgeball for about 10 or 15 years with Simon and Brett in Lutterworth Meteors, and back like 10 years ago, I was on the three ball B team for Meteors, and I was absolutely terrible back then. I could only do one kind of like spin throw. It was terrible. My catching was okay, but yeah, up until after COVID, I had no real competitive experience in dodgeball. So I suppose it's kind of been the first sport I've properly pushed for besides football. So I played football fairly young, but then had like a break kind of a few years before uni. So I pretty much played like no sport for 5 years or so before I came back to dodgeball after COVID. And from that point, I've just been full send for dodgeball, really. The amount of injuries and just general aches and pains I've been through could probably be studied as like a transition, because I've had like knee issues. After every session when I first started, I'd have like a different pain that would make me like unable to play. So my legs would be so bad I could barely get up the stairs. My arm would be so bad I could barely lift things. I've pulled my oblique, my back, calves, rolled ankles, and everything. So there's not many dodgeball injuries I don't have. It's been a good journey and a good push so far.
Okay, that's very impressive. So basically, from 5 years of competitively playing at your computer to going into the real world and getting in, like getting the physical contact of dodgeball, quite takes quite a toll on your body and maybe a bit of a transition period. But now, I mean, I've probably known you since UDO 2 years ago, or like, yeah, not this year, the year before. So that's the first time I think I saw you actually play, and you have like a very unique style of playing and a very unique way of moving on the court. I see lots of our young players in the gym and our training session trying to simulate your throwing motion, and they're going up to the center line, going like Jack Leach, holding the ball up really high and trying to keep the arm there. uh, try to be really imposing and trying to emulate it, sort of. So like, where do you think that kind of style comes from? Is it because of your injuries that you had to move that way, or is it from your sporting background, or do you feel that's not a real thing?
I think it's a mix of both, really. So I got asked this question by a Wolfpack player. I can't remember his name. I do
Probably Luke.
apologize.
Probably
Um,
Luke.
but yeah, he he came up to me afterwards and saying we've been practicing your throw and all sorts. But for the history, oh, and Kareem asked me after Euros after we played them at NI. He wondered what my background was in sports and whatever, because there's no one really that does it kind of quite in the way I do. There's some similar ones, but I think I've pushed it a bit harder than anyone else. Just on the background of it, I've always kind of thrown things, whether it be like stones on the beach or like tennis balls at school and stuff like that. So I've always just had an affinity for throwing things. In terms of the actual mechanic now that I play, that I've kind of pushed and tried to develop, that's kind of, again, just part of the competitive learning process I've been through the past few years. So I try and add on a new mechanic every month or two and try and see like the effect it has on the game, the things you can do with it, and the levels you can push it to. And I think I counted at one point I have like 10 to 15 different like throw styles, at least, just in the way you move your arm from like above to the side, the spin, like the wrist, the way you position and move afterwards. And so I started, I can't remember what it was that triggered this. But again, I just used to steal mechanics from as many top players as I could. So when I started in the bottom league, when I first started Dodgeball, I was looking at players like Tamas and Brett
Yeah.
and some other players like that. I, for the life of me, can't replicate Brett's pre-throw still, the way he pushes that out. But I think it was either Tamas or another player you wouldn't know that did like a running back pre-throw where you're still running and you can kind of still stay on your front foot, but then get your arm off like that. And I thought, if you can do that in the middle, like while you're running backwards and kind of in the air, then why can you not just hold it in that position indefinitely? And so I just kept pushing it further and further, and it kind of developed into like I don't know, just it just worked for me. Where your throw, when you start to throw, you bring the ball up from your side, and it
Yeah.
reaches a point where it goes over the top, and at that point your arm's kind of at the full extension, and that's like the second half of your throw, and you can just leave it in that position if you've got the right mechanics down and just snap from there. And so for training over the last 2 years or so, I've kind of just developed different ways of using that.
Okay, so that's actually something you really consciously developed over the time. So
Yeah.
your throw initially, or like your throwing position or your throw, didn't look that way when you started out.
Oh no, definitely not.
Okay.
Like I say, when I first started dodgeball after COVID, like properly in competitive, I could barely throw the ball, and I would have to develop my throw and do different styles. Otherwise, it wouldn't even reach the other team. Like I would have to change to doing a side throw, even doing like 360 throws at one point because I just couldn't throw normally. So yeah, I've developed pretty much all of my tiny mechanics are developed either out of injury, not being able to do it the one I do, not being able to do it the way I want to, or from following better players and the mechanics that they use well and trying to get that in my playstyle.
That's really interesting and quite incredible because I feel like I've seen a lot of different throws over the time, and also I've seen a lot of people try to improve their throw or maybe change their throwing mechanics, and it's something that is very difficult, I feel like, and really few people really manage to do it well because you also have to be very patient because even if your throw isn't that good, if you change something, it's very tough and it takes just some time to get it so ingrained that it gets better than the other one. And so you really have to be willing to take like one step back to take two step forwards, maybe. And so that is something really few people do. And I've seen it a lot out of injury necessity, where basically players came to me with shoulder injuries and we sort of tried to improve their throwing mechanics because otherwise it hurt them or because it was just inefficient. And so it basically hurt them because they overused certain parts of their muscles or tissue. But it's always a very, very just frustrating process for people. And I myself also try a lot of different throwing mechanics. And over the years, I've developed also a few different slots and stuff like that. But still, like the basic throwing mechanics that you go to are very instinctual to people mostly. And like, as you said, like Tamash is the only other player that comes to my mind who has a similar sort of faking slash throwing motion that you have, and Brad like comes from the chest and holds his ball like till the last split second at his chest before he releases it. So it's really sort of the opposite of what you are doing. And yeah, it's like, especially if Tamash does it, it's really like intimidating because he can just release and he can generate so much power from that position. But for me personally, if I hold the ball for too long up there, I feel very exposed on the one side, and on the other side, it's just tougher for me to generate the movement and the velocity from there. So you just really practice to get your throw to that situation where it's natural in that slot, basically.
Yeah, kind of a mix of everything you say there. So a lot of these mechanics will come naturally one way or another to you. If you watch uni players that have just been playing for 1 or 2 years, you can tell they've only really got one or two styles of throw, and they just do whatever feels comfortable and they feel is the most power and accuracy. And like you say, at training, you need to push different styles and try different things, and it might not work at first. But one thing I learned in Counter-Strike is when you're trying something out in training, you need to take different paths and see how it's going to work out and learn the possible variations of what come of that. So if you want to try my throw, I'd say start off with what feels comfortable and gets the most power and accuracy, and then learn the use cases. And like you mentioned, it feels unnatural and difficult to come back down for the block after that. But there's kind of a tiny psychological quirk you can have if you really push with that. You can tell when players are finally going to commit to throw to you, and at that point you throw the final fake into the blocking position. And there's just tiny bits like that you would have to learn by repetitively doing it in training, because if you pull it out for the first time in a match, you're going to miss time reading when they're going to throw, and you don't know how they're going to react and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very interesting. So I think that is actually a part that a lot of people, especially like probably Luke, talked to you, and I think Alex and Johan from our club, you've played against them as well this weekend. So at Vienna Calling, and they're also like we have like one exercise that we always do in the beginning. I call it pressure counter, basically, where you do just basically a little 1v1 and do that repetitively against everyone. And I really use that to get an awareness for your own zone, how far you can push up, how your pressure sort of affects different players, how far you can close the distance to different players, different playing styles, and also how to develop the block, the timing of your throw and stuff like that. And so they're always trying different stuff, whether it's a block where they try to do like the little frog block, or like the gazelle, what we call when we jump over a ball, or different throwing styles. And so the Jack Leche, as they call it, is one of the most often seen creatures in that pressure counter situation. And it's just really fun because they've really started to develop it, and now it's actually working much better. It's still not always great, and in some situations it's really stupid, but also you can see they've been doing it for half a year now, probably. I think since UDO, and maybe since Euros a little bit, where they saw you for the first time. And so it's really interesting to see, especially younger players, to try and learn from things they see from other good players and see that develop over the time. So I think what's going to be interesting for especially young players or players who want to develop their throw is like, what's your process of actually developing your throw? Like, what did you do? Did you just look at people, what you liked, and tried it out for yourself? Did you do any video analysis? Did you do specific exercises at the gym, or how did you try to implement those throws? And how long does it take for you to get like a new movement in?
This is a tricky one because it's all kind of self-taught. There's in dodgeball, it's not like football where you have these massively experienced coaches and the game's been around for 100 years. You have to find your own way of learning different things. So in the beginning, to build strength, I would just push my arm as much as possible. Like I say, to the point it just wouldn't work. For mechanics, video replays are the most powerful thing you can use, really. In Counter-Strike, I would watch so like it would be half of my time would be spent watching videos, and it's kind of similar for dodgeball where you can't play constantly. You play for 2 to 4 hours a week at the most, really, and the rest of your free time is always you're going to have way more time and ability to watch and learn things. So whether that be gym tips or just other games, just watching stuff is the best way to go about it. For mechanics and well physicality, like in the gym, it's just an accumulation of knowledge overall, really. So like I get on little YouTube shorts, I get like some gym tips on there, and if I see one pop up that I haven't seen before, I'll definitely watch it because my legs are the worst thing, so I always watch any new things I can see for legs and stuff like that. And that goes for any kind of throwing motions. There's a lot you can learn from other sports like badminton and baseball, and baseball's kind of the best comparison, really. It's difficult to really nail down something that works exactly for dodgeball because there's so many different mechanics, and the fact that faking matters so much means it's not just a typical throw in motion. So in that sense, you also need to watch your own games back. I'm such a fiend for watching back my own games. If I ever play one, if I ever play a tournament or anything, like as soon as I get home, I'm instantly watching it back on YouTube if there's a live stream. That's kind of the same way I've learned mechanics and just general ability over the last few years as well. Is I've okay, the best comparison is with my fake because I literally cannot tell what position my arm is behind my head, and if I feel I've had a bad game, like at UDO, after the first match of the tournament, I would go back and watch that game in the stands, and just see how high my arm is, the position it's in, and the effect it has on players, because it varies quite a bit as well, even for me, where it can just have different effects, and I just play differently, and I need to identify what is going wrong or right in those situations. So when it comes to throwing patterns or general match play, just watching yourself is the best thing, but also watching good players and trying to learn why they do the things they do. And it's also just not in that exact moment. So if you were to watch Adam Hill just throw a ball when he's in neutral, kind of on his own, but he has cover, he's definitely got three balls, you'll see him stand there for a bit and throw a ball. You have to watch everything that leads up to that as well. So there's like 3 or 4 plays, some balls bouncing around. He checks he has possession. He knows he's got the cover on the wing. He knows the players he's throwing at doesn't have a ball. He knows the other wing isn't going to retaliate because he's stepped and faked for a while. There's so much nuance in everything in a dodgeball game, and when it comes to mechanics and everything as well. So just above everything, just watching videos and gaining knowledge is kind of the best way to go about it.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a big part of it and probably the most important. And I think that's something especially our young players are really good at. I mean, they watch more games than I've probably ever watched. And I like watching film, but as I'm getting older and have less time on my hand, I really watch much, much less than I've ever done before. And I think, as you said, it's a really big asset because as the games progress and everyone's trying to get a little bit more of an edge and trying to also find out holes in the different opponents, I can really feel when players are more studied basically and they know what I'm doing. So especially if I come up against newer players who have no idea what they've done before and I've never seen them before, I always take about 3 to 4 sets to try to get a feel for them, and I can sort of tell if they know me, not just like as myself, but if they've watched me play and try to go for my tendency, and then I've really to make a conscious adaptation in that moment to do something else because I know my tendencies very well and I can um, sort of work against them or have different options. But if I'm lazy or if the game's not that important, then I'm just gonna fall back on them. And if there's someone who knows them, I feel it very fast, and it's always like, okay, you've done your homework. Probably should do it as well in the future. But you like touched on so many important points there. I want to go back for a second more into like really developing the throw. So you said obviously trying out stuff, throwing your arm out, which as a physio is a double-edged sword for me. So do it, but do it in a very conscious way and also give it rest time in between. So if you throw your arm out, that's fine if you don't hurt it and it's just overdone, but give it the time till you throw it out again. I think throwing it out once, no big deal. Throwing it out a few times in a row without proper regeneration in between is a really bad recipe for disaster. And then you're gonna have to visit a physio, which no one really likes. So just a little caveat on that. But other than that, it's a really good thing because if you push your body and really try to get every tissue that is involved in your throat to really work to its fullest capacity, it's gonna have to adapt at some point. So one more thing is like, what are sort of the most important things now as you look back on a few years of really being a student of the game and having played at the highest level against pretty much everyone in the game? What are like things that you try to work on now to maybe get the last few percent out of your throwing mechanics, out of your whole gameplay?
It really is tiny mechanics. Just before I properly answer that, like you say, it is a scale when you're pushing to improve your fitness and your strength. Initially, when I started out, my arm would take, but it would just heal the part that felt the worst off after a few weeks. But now, if I was to push it that much, I probably would break myself quite badly. So you just do need to feel your own body. What was this question? How do I approach
Yeah,
making
like you've obviously done this for quite a while and it seems to have worked quite well for you. So you tried watching video, trying different throwing mechanics, feeling out what works for you, also trying to push it a little bit in the gym and probably work on your mechanics there as well. Obviously, like getting information from different sources. Obviously, baseball for me is also one of the most important for like the pure throwing mechanics. But as you said, there is a big caveat in dodgeball that you seldom get to use like a full proper run up throwing motion without anything interfering in that. And that is one of the most important things. Like everyone or many people can throw really hard if there's just a radar gun in front of them. But can you consistently do that in different situations in a game? Is way more important, in my opinion. And that's where the nuances are, where you said like, on like, where is your balance? Are you moving backwards? How do you move your arm when you're in a backwards position? When someone is faking, you have to fake and then do the throwing motions. Like, what are the most important things that you may have worked um, in the last year or so and are working on now to try to improve even more on that high level?
pretty much a combination of everything you highlighted there. I'm no longer at a point where I can just push my through in any kind of way, and hope it'll improve. I have to focus on some specific elements. I feel like the strength is not necessarily reaching a limit, but it's just pushing the general strength doesn't really work anymore, and it's far more of a focus on mechanics and usage, and just everything else that comes around, and just placement. It's a difficult thing to describe, like the 20 different topics that are now more than just throw the ball hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is for me now. The main priority is just general strength building and learning everything I can about throwing mechanics and to do with rotation and arm stretching, just general strength building and stretching, and just athletic improvement is my main focus at the moment, because I have reached the level where I feel I have like a fair, well, certainly a reasonable amount of mechanics that I can use, and I just need to perfect what I've got and learn when to use them properly. And I feel the biggest thing that lets me down is just just having the slight edge. If you watch, I feel I have a fairly strong throw in general, but being able to get that off quickly and accurately, and also just be match ready after multiple games as well, is just a big focus. So if I was gonna, I won't tell you what it is now to leak things, but literally in the last 3 weeks or so, I have started to develop a new throw. I don't know if I can leak exactly what it is now for the lead up to Worlds, but it'll be a good one actually.
Okay.
So I'm going to be training that. But this one will actually push new muscles for me, and has not the best accuracy at the moment. So I again need to relearn how to throw it accurately, powerfully, how to incorporate it into different positions if you're pressuring and faking, and just a general throw, and the other really unique utilizations as well. Like you touched a little bit on the psychology of who you play against, and I think it's a massive thing in dodgeball. If you were to play Tamas, having never watched him, I feel you would be at like a 25 to 50% disadvantage by never having seen him. But the more you see him and the more you play him, the more you get used to him and you know how to play him. So it's learning when to use your mechanics against the players you know as well. And for me, learning this new throw is to combat some people like you that I've had difficulties
No,
with.
don't do that. You've done
uh,
fine.
yeah, it's I think to combat some people that I've had difficulties with and areas that I've struggled in, and it's a good follow on from what I already have as well. So it's going to be a good learning process, and hopefully I can push it.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. Maybe now I have to think about stuff as well and try to come up with a new throw.
Come up with a whole new throw.
The holy throw. Ooh, I love it. I already see our young ones doing it in training, so I'm gonna experience that one afterwards. So, but let's push maybe a little bit further because all you said completely rings true for me, and I think everyone who's um, thought about that a lot and watched those videos and tried to improve throwing mechanics and stuff like that, that makes really sense that it's like it's such a complex topic. There are so many minute details that get into it, but then again, for many especially younger players, it's really hard to like know where to start or what it actually means to work on your throwing mechanics. And I sometimes do a few drills in training, and it's really tough for players who don't know what it is yet to really figure it out, what it is until you've sort of felt it. It's really hard. So I feel like maybe you can give your younger fans out there a few pinpoints, like what were the things that really helped you from becoming, as you said, not the best thrower in the world to one who is regarded internationally and especially has a lot of copycats out there who try to imitate what they see because it's really effective and really good.
Since I never had any, like I said, I never had any proper professional coaching. I probably don't have the best tips on this, but some of the best advice I had was overhearing a conversation that is between some England senior players about some kind of physio that they had in a few years ago, and they taught them all the mechanics from baseball throws, and it really rung true for how I started to learn the different parts of how I throw as well. So if you were to just throw from your wrist, you get like 2 to 5% of the power. Then if you go from your elbow, it's a little bit more. Then the shoulders are a little bit more again. And when you can incorporate your whole body and the way you crunch over. Um, if I was to give advice to a newer player, again, besides just watching video back, I would have someone watch you and see what feels natural. It's difficult to describe the way I would tell someone to learn a good throw. But you just need to focus on the different parts of your mechanics. So, like I say, when you reach the top of when you start to throw, when your arm comes over, that's like the second half of when you start to throw, and you really that's where most of the power comes through, and when you start to complete. And if you were to look at a freeze frame of players in that position, you can see it's almost fully extended. Their elbow is over. Their wrist is behind their elbow. It's flexed. Their bicep and pec are fully flexed to the side. The body's kind of side on to begin with, and then it curves down across your front torso into your hip, and you plant your front leg straight, and then that all chains through, um, with it kind of in that reverse motion. So starting at your front leg, you jam the hip in, crunch your whole body across, the shoulder follows, then the elbow, and finally snap through with your elbow and wrist as well. Um, Yeah, it's a difficult topic to describe without visually showing.
Mhm.
But I mean, like I've just been doing the motions to Stefan.
I've seen it.
Um,
It looked perfect.
uh, yeah, it's a tricky one. How would you approach it?
No, I mean, like the throwing motion that you just described is like the most fundamental part where I feel like there are a lot of really good resources out there. And as you said, baseball is probably one of the best to really learn like that whole situation from basically the stride out, the balance between your legs, sort of the planting position, and then how your body from the plant in your left foot, if you're a right-handed player, starts to get the energy throughout the kinetic chain from your left foot through your left hip, especially through your left knee first. That's where lots of not so good players lose a lot of power, where they just basically collapse and lose a lot of that energy. So basically, that you have a strong plant where you can really push that energy from your foot up to your hip, and then have the proper hip mobility to really use that forward rotation of your right pelvis and really block that forward momentum that you generated with your run up, and get that through your hopefully stiff and strong torso up into your shoulder, and then elbow, and at the latest into your arm. And like that is the the most important concept that I think everyone who's doing throwing sport should at some point watch a few videos about, and really try to understand how that position looks for him. And that can be a little different if you throw more of a sidearm or overhead, or it depends on your levers, your mobility, your strength, and everything from that. But that is the one thing, like knowing it how it should be in theory, but then really feeling that lag, that separation between the ball, your upper body, and your lower body, and feeling a plant, what it means to generate power from your hip, is really hard. And so that
Yeah,
I've I've been teaching this for a long time now. And for young players, I feel it's not such a big problem, because they, if they just are new to the sport and are in their developmental phase, they usually learn it by themselves, because it's something you develop over time. And if you're young enough and athletic enough, and don't have any really bad mechanics in between there, then it usually comes in quite naturally. And then you can tweak a few minor things and it works out fine. What's much tougher is when someone hasn't had that background of throwing sports and comes into the sport later, to really learn throwing from not having that experience in youth. And so that's why I thought it would be quite interesting to hear it from you. Obviously, you have a lot of sports background and you have been throwing stones in lakes and stuff like that, but still your throw wasn't that good, as you were already quite developed as an athlete. And then learning how to throw from that position is very, very tough, because as you said, your body has to get used to it, and the throwing motion is such a violent, fast motion on your shoulder, your hips, your arm, your elbow. It depends on your throwing motion where like the weakest points are, but that is something that just takes a lot of time and very meticulous efforts in really cleaning out that motion and getting it as efficient as possible, to make it really sustainable and give your shoulder also longevity and power. And so, yeah, that's why I think you're a very good person to talk about this, because you're obviously very meticulous about those things, know a lot about it, also research it, and then practice it yourself. So maybe to bring this segment to an end, like what would be like a few exercises that you feel you get a lot of benefit or got a lot of benefit out of? What are like maybe some video resources or some tips you have for players who have like a mid-tier throw, who can throw a ball, but like their shoulder gets very weak after a long tournament, they feel like it's really tough to push a few extra miles out of their arm? Do you have maybe some tips for that?
yeah, you summarized it quite well there. I feel, like I say, if you were to watch a uni player, someone that's not really played that much sport but is trying to push something new, you can really see kind of what they're doing wrong in the throw. And at training, when you're going to throw the ball, it's not just a case of forcing in the mechanics or forcing trying to push harder. You really need to just take some time and learn which part of the throws do what actions. So the way your wrist is, the way it like spins off, just change the way you throw the ball just at a wall, trying different things and different mechanics, whether it's more to the side, more over the top, more elbow slack, more wrist. Try just rotating your body. At training this last week, I literally just focused on torso rotation. I kept my arms straight, just rotated my whole body, and just used like my oblique, my well, not really my pec either. Just I was at the full extension to the right, just rotated my torso, and it's focusing on small bits like that and working out what's for newer players that haven't really thrown so much and are starting to feel their arms fall off. You know the part of your throw that's the weakest and the muscles that are suffering, and just try and it's not necessarily avoid that, but learn how to better use it. So if you feel like your rotator cuff is being destroyed or it's your bicep, I don't know how to specifically pinpoint that, but you just work on finding the areas that are close to what you do, but just utilize the muscles and the mechanics better. And like I say, well, it didn't really happen to me when I first started doing this fake and throw, but it started to creep in towards the end of last year and the start of this year. As I started to have pain in my rotator cuff from when I was just pushing it so much, and so I relaxed a little bit and kind of built up to it properly instead. So if you're trying a new throw, a new mechanic, and you're feeling a lot of fatigue and you don't want to try it again, just kind of fade into it and learn the things around it before trying to properly force it in and pushing it too much. And yeah, like I say, the best thing you can do is just throw a ball at a wall a bunch of times and learn the different mechanics and parts of the way you throw. And hopefully you have someone around like Stefan you can ask that has a lot of experience and can point out the parts of your throw that may be lacking.
Very well. Do you have like some favorite video resources, or is it just your algorithm full of throwing mechanic videos like mine?
I may have some lurking around. That I'd say the best thing you can do is just search for throw and rotation mechanics. It all applies. So yeah, literally like throwing what are they called? Just the big gym balls at a wall, even bits that aren't technically related to a throw, but are part of rotational mechanics are good. So just the more you learn, it can never be a bad thing, really. Like I said, my knowledge is just an accumulation of everything I've learned from dodgeball players and videos online and finding bits wherever. So yeah, like I say, all of my mechanics are either poached off good players or as a result of injury, and I've searched how to avoid that injury, or I've spoken to that player. So yeah, the best thing you can do is like just get knowledge and accumulate it.
Yeah, that is completely fair. And I think I'm just looking up because I have a few baseball accounts that I really like, and I thought maybe it's good to throw them in here. And currently, my YouTube is not helping me with the right coming up with the right videos. So maybe I'll have to find that later, because there's one channel I watch a lot where they really break down the throwing mechanics and break down all the different parts, which are very important. And as Jack said here, like just trying it out and giving it some time, really be patient with it. Because if you try to switch up a throwing mechanic, it's a motion where the arm has so much velocity and there is so much strain on the muscles and tendons and the connective tissue that when you change a little minute detail, it just really puts the burden on maybe a tiny bit of a different tissue which is not used to it and which can get overused really fast. So if you try to change something, give it time, be very patient, don't expect it to work or feel good right away, because it won't, because you're just not used to it. And really try to stick to what you thought about the change before. So like maybe you did a video and you see that your arm slot, like your elbow is just too low it's not high enough, then really try to work on that and don't expect it to feel right, and control it with video over a longer period of time till it feels a little bit better. And then maybe give it a time, I would say, like somewhere around 4 weeks at least, to really settle in and get the desired effect. And it won't happen overnight. If you're a really experienced player, then you can play around with a few things and change it up in the moment because you've already trained a few different things. But developing a new throwing style takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And if you overdo it, then you're gonna get injured. And you really, really want to avoid injury in the shoulder, because it's just a painful bitch and it's just gonna slow down every progress you made. So slow progress is great for throwing, I would say. All right, that was sort of a side quest. I didn't know we would get into that, but I think it's very important, and I think at least a few people would find this interesting. And since you have just a unique style, which I think is always such a cool thing, because I think the more popular the sport gets and the more you get to use a lot of resources, then the more individualized approaches get lost and everyone sort of mashes together, and you can see there are still some OGs with some very distinct movement patterns, throwing patterns, and then the young ones just copy everything that works and move it into the perfect dodgeball player who will probably exist in a few years. But I think we're far from there yet. So yeah, and maybe in the future everyone will stand there with their hands raised and are not gonna take that the ball out of that like late cocking position of the throw where you can instantly release it. Like, now that I think about it, like for us it's Kati Weber who did this, and who still does it, who just keeps the ball really high and just releases from up there. And yeah, I think it's such a cool move, because you can apply so much pressure in that position, because obviously everyone knows you could throw any second. And if you're able to, from that really aggressive position, still be able to dodge, defend, and block very well, then it's an absolute weapon. So definitely something to try out. If you haven't seen Jack's move yet, check him out. I think there's lots of video from Vienna Calling, UDO, some finals at the last European Championships, so you can definitely get to see him. So awesome. Was cool picking your brain on that one. So from that, let's dive into a little bit of a different topic, which is international tournaments. As you said, when you started pushing for dodgeball or going into dodgeball, you really were aiming for that international spot in the English squad, and you managed to get that pretty fast. And like, I think the first time was at Worlds 2024, right?
No, what did I? I've only been in the squad, well, playing for two sets of the Western European Championship and one Euros. So I missed.
Ah,
Was it Graz?
Yeah, great. Okay, that was my bad. I meant like the last European Championships in
Oh,
Limerick,
okay.
not the Worlds. No,
Yeah, that was the first
yeah,
proper tournament.
true. So the first tournament was Limerick, and obviously you made a final appearance there, and you played in the mix as well, right?
Yes.
Yes, so two final appearances. Maybe talk to me a little bit about like your first international appearance at that stage, and then like what got you into tournaments like UDO, Vienna Calling, and stuff like that.
Yeah, for Euros, I wasn't initially selected for the squad. At that point, I was playing in both cloth and foam. I had definitely a priority for cloth. But yeah, for whatever reason, I wasn't selected for cloth, and then for whatever reason, wasn't selected for foam either. So after this initial round of selections, I just wasn't going to Euros to begin with. And I don't know what pushed it over the edge in the end. Maybe some injuries or some discussion internally, but I did get a late call up for Euros, and it was good. At that point, I didn't view myself as I don't know, a core squad member. I was expected to play groups in the middle at Euros with some easy games, and that would be it. But it was also that point. That must have been, yeah, the season I moved from Meteors to Spartans. So I'd won Super League with Meteors in I don't know, whenever. I'd won Super League with Meteors there, but didn't really play much and was more of a middle player. And then moved to Spartans and became kind of a main winger. And at that point was the selections for Euros and everything. So I kind of gained a bit more prominence within the English Super League there, and then got selected, and then played, and then got sent to Euros. So yeah, I was expecting to only play the groups really and not get much game time and just fill for whatever, but ended up playing quite well. I'd say I surprised a few people, and whether it be through, I don't know if the injuries were that early, but maybe just performing better than some of the players on the squad. Ended up playing probably far more than I should have in the end, because I played all of the quarters and the semis, and like you say, both finals. I played the majority of, I think, so it was quite a surprising initial debut, shall we say. What was your other point? The other tournaments like Vienna. Yeah, I've, like I say, I've always aimed for England since I began, and UDO has, for me, was like the next best thing to a Euros and a Worlds. It's kind of had all the teams and the players there, and was just the best thing outside of British dodgeball, because in BD there's 8-minute halves. It's just a one-day event. It's not really good. There's just the random collections of teams. Like you could play Meteors, or you could play some people that have only been playing for 6 months. Not very good. So yeah, I initially, I can't remember if I just joked to BP and Ryan Ellis, who kind of like you'd say the creators of Mosh. It started out as a bit of a fun team, but then they managed to get quite a few good players. So I just joked to them that if they have a free spot for UDO, I'd like to go. And then they ended up saying, "Well, do you want to go get gold in UDO?" And so that was 3 years ago now. It was the first proper international tournament I went to, and we ended up winning mixed in that, and it was such a high for us as well. Yeah, we beat a load of good teams there, and it's just a really, really good experience. If there's any aspiring dodgeballers that have only been playing for 1-2 years and want to reach international level, it's a great just platform to both make a name for yourself and get some experience as well, because you play people that you wouldn't play normally, and you get to see all of the available styles, and it's not quite the same just watching these things on camera. So as I've been following dodgeball for 10-15 years, I knew Tam Asbrett, Simon, Lottie Millington, all these people that have been around forever, but I'd never really spoken to half of them. Like I can't remember the first time I saw you, but you've been around in that core three of like NI, Austria, and England for however long. So I've known, like, not known, but I've known of Adam Hill and the rest of the NI boys for way longer than they've known me, pretty much. And yeah, so if you go to one of these international tournaments, it's just a great event and vibe for everything really, except your wallet, maybe.
Yeah, fair. That is absolutely fair. So like, compare maybe a little bit like the difference between a tournament like UDO and Euros from your perspective. Obviously you had won Euros and it came unexpected, but then was a very intense first start and a very good one. So what is it about international tournaments and competitive dodgeball that really hooks you?
Yeah, the vibe is totally different compared to like a UDO. The England squad's very professional and has always had people like physios and I don't think they're sports psychologists, but they've always had a lot of backing from just professional management and structure and whatever. And when it comes to the tournament, it is a lot more structured and professional than you would find a UDO or a Vienna Calling, because there's so much more layers to it. There's so much more practice that's gone into it. Everyone really has pushed for years and leading up to the event to do well and perform there. So there's a lot more expectations, a lot more pressure. Yeah, it's just a totally different vibe. What was your other point? Sorry.
Yeah, basically that. And what's like the difference, and what do you personally enjoy about both of these sides of competitive dodgeball?
Yeah, for now, I always I can never just go to something just to play it and have fun, unless it's something like a charity event. I feel like if I go to a UDO or a Vienna Calling, then I'm there to try and perform and play as well as I can, really. Yeah, it's with Mosh at UDO, it's always a great vibe mixed with great players as well. So we can have fun and win as well. It's maybe not been that story for the last couple of times, unfortunately. But yeah, I just really enjoy the international ones. It's a just completely different vibe, and it's difficult to describe without being there. I imagine it's similar for Austria and NI and the top teams, where your whole squad has been performing, like I say, for years and leading up to the event, pushing so hard and in the gym and training and everything. It's just a different aura and vibe around those events. So yeah, I don't really have much experience for the international front being at 1 Euros, but yeah, it's definitely it's tougher, but it is just as fun, I'd say.
Mm. And from the competition, like, because for me, just from my perspective, I've been to both of those sort of tournaments for a while now, and like I completely distinct. They're very separately very fun to me, and as you said, Euros is much more professional, much more serious, more pressure, more preparation. Also, like you have a few national teams, you know your opponents from the very beginning. There is also a selection process, so not everyone can get there. But then, even though like the level of play has risen a lot over the past few years, it's still, at least from, and that's why I wanted to ask you, from the perspective of the big nations like England and Austria, where it's like you have very relaxed, basically relaxed group stages, maybe apart from one game, and then you sort of really start to play for the tournament, and then it's most of the time the obvious opponents where you really have to fight for it, and then it's the most high pressure situations that you have in this sport, and also probably the most competitive dodgeball. And at the fun tournaments over the last few years, a lot of really established players and teams have started to go there. And now, since there is so much more quality in the top nations, that the depth of player skill is so big now, that Euros don't really represent the top 100 dodgeball players. They represent basically the top 30 dodgeball players, and then a few that are a bit below that. And so I found like that the the depth, but also like the equality of strong teams in competitions like UDO or Vienna Calling is actually much higher, and you really have, from the first games, you have really good competitive games without that sort of big pressure preparation situation. And you have lots of mixed teams and fun teams who don't really know each other that well, who are there to have a good time, but also to really play competitive dodgeball to their utmost competence. So I found that over the last few years, and I've seen this with UDO and Vienna Calling, that the level has risen so much that now the level at those tournaments is much higher when you see throughout the whole competition compared to Euros. And maybe the top play is a little bit different, but I wouldn't even say so. If you see like finals now and you have teams like Anarchy in there, where it's basically a mixture of the best international players, then you can't really say that there are much better teams at Euros anymore. And so yeah, basically for me, it still has that complete fun and social component where you're there to have a good time, and everyone is there on their own money, which they are at Euros as well mostly, but it's just not so serious, and every team just has their own vibe. Some are more serious, some are more there to party, but it's just more relaxed and social. But you get really great competitive dodgeball, and for me, that over the last 2 years, that's the thing that I enjoy most about it. So I've really come to appreciate those tournaments a lot, and apart from taking a lot of time and a lot of money, they're just grown a lot on me. So I just wanted to see, especially since you're on the English side and coming from that, from the other side, basically, how it is for you, the difference, and how you experience those competitions.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying. Like I say, I've been to 3 UDOs now. We won the first one in mixed, and the past couple have had teams like Old But Gold and Anarchy, which are just full of the best international players, and that didn't really happen before. It was so I think there's been five. I think the MK and Mosh guys have been to like 4 out of those 5, and the first 2 were just teams like Lausanne Foxes and I struggle to name someone else, but they're the perfect team to reference really, because I believe they were in the final against MK the first time, and it was just kind of wow, are they from Switzerland?
Yeah,
I can't remember. Yeah, a Switzerland kind of mixed team, having fun but also pushing it, with an English team that's pretty much no internationals, and they're both in the final just having fun. And it's quite a difference now from where it once was, because it's now Anarchy against Barbarians or Old Gold, where it's just full international players, and the level has risen so much in those tournaments over the past few years. It is arguably tougher than a Euros or a Worlds, I would say, up until the last few stages. Like a Vienna Calling, I think that was arguably one of the most stacked tournaments I've seen in a while. I think, besides, not to speak poorly of them, but Birmingham Bears and the 2 Hong Kong teams. Besides them, it was all what I would deem English Super League or international level teams. Like, it was all insanely hard, shall we say.
Yeah.
Everyone has massive throws. Everyone's been around for years. They can all catch. They all know the game. There's no one on those teams outside of those the Hong Kong and Birmingham Bears teams that's really like new-ish to the game. And Euros is different from that, where you at the start you would play teams like Norway, or who else did we play? Previously it would be the Netherlands. They're starting to creep up, but Netherlands were a team like that, where you have a few good players, but after that it kind of falls off a little bit, and it feels easier for like an NI, Austria, or England to play one of those games. And yeah, like the Euros I played, we had a few easy games in the groups, and it started to get progressively tougher towards the harder games, like the semi and the final. So we played France in mixed, I believe, and that was our first kind of close game, being in the semi-final, just for mixed, that is. And then we went straight into playing Northern Ireland, whereas at Vienna Calling, with the mixed squad I played there, struggle to think who we played. We had one of the Hong Kong teams, but then had like Belfast Bananas, who are just the 3 NI, not 3, but 3 or 4 main NI boys. We had you guys in semi, and just played. Yeah, it was just constantly tough teams. And we played the semi-final against Anarchy in men's, and beat Vienna State Spartans in the quarter, who I would put above almost any other team besides NI, Austria, and England, really, in terms of ability for men's. So yeah, Vienna Calling and UDO have become quite stacked.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I think of it, I don't know how it will develop, but I feel like maybe in the next few years that like sort of 3 or 4 major tournaments will crystallize, which are, for me right now, it's definitely UDO. For me, it's Vienna Calling as well. And then hopefully DCO, which will happen in August for the first time, which will be a 2-day event, but will progress to a 3-day as well, which will also be very stacked with a lot of player, maybe a 4th one, which is maybe in Italy, or the Swiss one, and then maybe a few tournaments where maybe 1 or 2-day tournaments where the level might not be that high and for newer players to play. But I think it's so cool that at those events like UDO or Vienna Calling, also if you're an aspiring player, you get to choose to play against the best players in the world and get that experience, which is much tougher to get at a Euros, especially if you're from a country like England or Austria, where it's just so tough to make the final squad. And as you said, you haven't even been in the selection yet, and you're definitely one of the top players of the last 2 years, and you've played at UDOs against all the players, so which definitely also helped you to progress to that level. And of course, you in England have the Super League, which is definitely the most competitive club league we have right now. But for other countries, it's really hard to get that competition. And so I think that's also just a cool thing, to get teams from Hong Kong to come over and see their unique style, which is also just so cool to see people with so different athletical abilities, and obviously they're not um, to the level of cloth dodgeball in Europe, but they have a lot of promise and lots of basic fundamentals and incredible movement, and it's really tough to hit them. So if you want to learn some dodging abilities, don't look at Mikey McGee, look at Edel. One of the most swapped jerseys, I think, from Vienna Calling, because Edel was one of the Astros guys, I think, and in Austrian it means like very nice in a posh way, and so it's something lots of people like to say. So I think his shirt was occupied by Flo Hackel after 5 seconds once he entered the venue. But no, I ref the Hong Kong teams and they came in last, but still the amount of quality that their individual players bring to that game is quite intense, and they just haven't figured out the whole tactics. But after such a tournament, they will learn just a lot and bring it back, and hopefully next year it will be even better. So let's dive a little bit into your Vienna Calling run, because I want to get a little bit into that tournament if you still have a few minutes.
Totally.
Yeah, so because as you said, Euros, you can basically, as a top nation, you can have a quite easy life till the semis if everything goes well. And at Vienna Calling, it's a 3-day tournament. You don't have that big of a squad and you play good teams from the very beginning on. So if you want to compete and you wanted to compete in both divisions, then it's full pedal to the metal from the beginning. Like, how did your body, how did your mental game and all survive those 3 days?
Yeah, I was speaking to Izzy Smith in my mix squad on day 2, I believe, and just said it was towards the end of it. And I just said, I think I've played way too much and pushed too hard. My body was still fine, but I could just tell I'd been exhausted. I was sweating like the whole time. And yeah, just to read out the people we had in our group. So we had Hastar, one of the Hong Kong teams, which was 1810. And after that, it's Anarchy, the Czech national team, Shot Stars, pretty much NI minus the people that were on Anarchy. Then after that, in the quarterfinals, you had Vienna State Spartans. Again, very close game, a really good team. And then for our third, fourth, who do we have? Wolfpack as well. So just the level across everything is insane. And yeah, it being a 3-day tournament with 15-minute halves, going to 20-minute halves, and playing most of it because the games are all so hard. It is a lot. It's really good for experience building, like you say, for new players. If you were to go to a Vienna or a UDO, you would learn so much, and especially about your body, how your body handles after a couple of days of just hard pushing a tournament as well. You really learn what you need to work on back at the gym. So for me, this is the best I'd felt after a UDO, because previously my arm would be hanging off, my throw strength would drop off. At Euros, I was actually oddly really good, but this Vienna, I think I performed at 90% plus the whole way. Yeah, but it's a really good vibe and a really hard push. Yeah, it's even if you can't attend the national teams, like a Euros or a Worlds or anything, you could build up to one of these things like it was one, because they are pretty much the same level or harder. And what else did you mention?
Yeah, basically that, like how you survive, or how do you like progress yourself through those 3 days of competitive dodgeball, because you said it's really tough to not play, because you have to play in order to win those matches. But if you play everything, the accumulated playing time is just out of this world. And for myself, a few things that I've learned again, and I've been playing like a little bit of a side note, like back in the day when we played Euros and it was still 3 ball and it was 2 days events, I think. And after the first day, I felt horrible. And back then I was young and we were just looking at the English player and they still looked fresh. And we were like, how are you still throwing? Our arms hurt, everything hurts. And it was only a few years later that I like finally realized that when you're a way better team and you have lots of good players, then you can get so much more rest than the nations who are just scrapping for the last few places and who have to go all out every single match. And that is like the luxury that you have as an England, as an Austrian squad, to really manage your players well, even if they're doubling. Basically, the last day where you have semis and finals is the toughest day, and you get there really fresh. And then you have maybe at best 4 games, which are grueling, and afterwards you probably feel like shit, but you go into that day quite fresh. And at Vienna Calling, I had 4 games on Monday, which were 2 semifinals, one against you in the mixed, which was like 2 sets separation at the end, and we went back and forth throughout the whole game. We had a men's semifinal against Wolfpack where we won by 2 sets or something and went back and forth the whole game. And then we had a final against Anarchy, which was decided in the last 2 sets, and then a final against Wolfpack, which was decided in the last 2 sets. So basically played all those 40 minutes of every game. But I was not fresh when I started that morning. So before that, I played a quarterfinal against Belfast Bananas, and Johnny Hill um, tried to kill me in that game. So that was really tough. And we played a quarterfinal in the men's against, I'm blanking. Against whom did we play in the men's quarterfinal?
I've got it up. I can probably find you.
Yeah, because we played you in the semis, and who was the men's quarter? I'm completely blank.
Huari, no? Czech team.
Yeah. So the Czech national team, we played them in the quarterfinal, and we know them very well, which was to our advantage. But we still pretty much had to play 100% to beat them. So, and in the groups, we played Grey Wolverines with Steve and a lot of good players, where we fought till the last second, and I think we won it in the last second because Johan made a catch in a 1v4 and caught Steve out in the last set and brought me back in, and we turned that set around. But that was like, even in the group stages, we were not prepared for that kind of intensity. So yeah, there was just from the very beginning on, we had competitive games. So one thing I learned at Vienna Calling, which was something I wanted to do for 10 years now, is to radar my throw before the tournament and after the tournament, because I've never done it before, and I've had different stages of shoulder pain after 3 or 4 days of dodgeball, and I just wanted to know what my throw looks like. And I would have lost a lot of money because I would have not bet on that result, because it was completely the same. I threw the exact same speed before the tournament and after the tournament, and I was warmed up before, and I had a bet going, so I needed to earn my breakfast. So I threw at 100%, and after the tournament, when my arm in warm-ups felt like shit, and it took me like 10 throws to sort of convince it to start the throwing motion again. Afterwards, it was completely the same. And that was something I would have never guessed. And I don't think it's something I always had. And because I can remember in the past where there were later stages in the tournament where I got caught way more because of fatigue and my arm didn't feel that fresh anymore. And this tournament, even though it was one of the most intense ones, I felt even in the finals, like in the game against Anarchy, our throws were still there at 100%. And I think that is something that is often overlooked, especially by players who aren't so experienced, how important longevity in your game and your arm is, that you can sustain it over a long period of time and over a lot of grueling matches, then ref spots in between, eating bad food, sleeping too little, drinking too much, and then being able to play again the next day. So yeah, that was quite astonishing to me, and I would have never thought that it was so close. How do you feel about yours? Would it be the same?
Yeah, I've always had a really weird inconsistency here where at that first UDO that I played, I felt awful on day 2 and 3. Like I really pushed the first couple of days harder than I should have really. And my arm was killing, my back was killing, everything's felt so achy. But I believe that I physically peaked in the final at that event. Like my throw was unbelievably fast at that UDO final. I can't explain it because it feels awful. Yeah, it's kind of been inconsistent for me. At Euros, I felt 95, 100% all of the tournament until the finals, where I for whatever reason, just felt a drop off, and it was still maybe like 85, 95%, but you can tell when you're starting to fatigue and your arm goes slightly, and things like accuracy and a bit of
Mm.
power go out the window. You can't quite do what you want, and then it kind of psychologically affects you as well. Um, yeah, it's quite inconsistent. At this Vienna Calling, I would say I held up 90, 95% pretty much the whole time, and I can't really explain that besides just an accumulation of knowing how much to push those first 2 days. I pushed it just enough to win, but not enough to throw my arm out
Mm.
for the first day or two. So yeah, it's very hard to describe and to get across for anyone that hasn't done it. So if you were going into a tournament like there's a guy called Isaac Dunford that's kind of new to the England squad this year, and I think his first UDO was 2 UDOs ago, where I kind of first saw him, and I could tell on the first day I think I played him. He had a decent throw, but I could tell he was pushing it far too hard. And it's some of those newer players that just don't know quite the level to reach yet. And I think after how many tournaments now? It's like two WECs, 3 UDOs, a Vienna Calling, and a Euros. I've done like 7 internationals now. I think now I'm starting to understand the need for the rest and how much to push
Mm.
certain things, and I don't really need to prove anything by throwing 110% in the group stage, because even if you lose a game, you're still going to go through.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just overall an accumulation of knowledge and everything. I think I held up quite well this event despite the heat and
Mhm.
the difficulty of the games. So, yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah.
It's a good test of ability as well, actually.
Yeah, I think so as well. So, like for me, I'm a way bit older than you, and so I'm always like at UDO. I think this year it was especially hard because we had a few players missing from our men's squad, so we had to play way more than we wanted to. And like I don't know if it was after the first day where I felt worst or after the second day, but at some point I was no. I think like after the first day I felt bad because I still had Tamash on my other wing, and after the second day where we had like 2 games where we just completely had to push every last drop out and had too many matches, like the next morning I woke up and said to Pasti, oh, I don't think I can double from this point on out, because like playing both mixed and men's is just so much fun, but it's so hard, especially when the durations of the sets gets longer and the competition um, in both sections gets just that much tougher. Then it's just at some point it won't be possible, or you need much bigger squads. And I think at UDO, after the second day, I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. But then again, as you said, once you're warmed up or just convince your body to start playing again, sort of the adrenaline and something kicks in. And during the game, I don't think I feel it, and I don't think it hinders me. And I think if someone said to me, jump, I wouldn't be able to do it. But if someone throws a ball at me, my body just takes over and it doesn't feel bad either. Sometimes I land and I'm like, wow, I just did that in the morning. Like the person my wife saw crawling out of the bed in the morning and the person that Mikey McGee saw when he threw at me are 2 very different specimen, I would say. And that is something that is always very astonishing to me, but also very reassuring that it doesn't really matter how you feel if you have kept your limits and have been very smart about the way you pushed your body. Even though it doesn't feel good, it will still survive it. But once you go over that line, and which you always do on the last day, and I did this year again, I felt like a truck hit me the 2 days after. So like on Tuesday, Vienna Calling was on a Monday, the finals day, where I played 4 games. And on Tuesday, I had to work, but only in the afternoon, and I really felt like a train hit me full steam ahead. And I was just posting in our group, please, Alex, like our younger players, please tell me that you're hurting too. And he was like, yeah, my thumb is sore because he got a ball on it. And I was like, fuck you. That is not what I needed to hear right now. And it takes a few days. And this weekend we have CEC, so Central European Championships, which hopefully will be much less training than Vienna Calling. But like, how do you feel about playing double at a tournament like this at Vienna Calling? What's your thoughts after this tournament? And what's
It's
your thoughts
tricky.
for the next one?
It's tricky. I think Vienna was quite a unique one because I just felt warm and I pushed at a good level the whole time. So if I was to only play men's and if I went outside and cooled off properly, then I think I probably would have had a worse time than if I was to play double actually, because you just maintain the level over the 2 days. And like you say, once you actually get into it, you can fully roll. And it's like the off periods that kind of get you the worst. So like the day after we finished at Vienna, we went to like an aquarium or something. It had like 10 different flights, and getting up those stairs was
Haus des Meeres.
that was rough. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I quite like playing both. It just it keeps the pace quite there. I don't know. I'm trying to compare this to Mexico. I feel Mexico was at a good kind of level, but yeah, it's a tricky one. I think if I was to play a Euros or a Worlds or something with both categories and only play one of them, I think that would be worse for me than if I was to play both because of just how the schedule and the gaps work.
Mm.
So personally, I prefer playing both. I think I can manage playing like most of the game at a high level for now, just because of where I am physically. I'm physically good enough for it. There are some players, despite being really good, that would struggle to fulfill that for whatever reason, whether they push too hard too soon or just have some kind of niggles and injuries. Yeah, no, I enjoy the challenge of pushing it as well.
Okay, that's good. So maybe like what's left for you this season? You've had UDO, you've had Vienna Calling, you had Mexico. Your league is done as well. You had British Open. Did you play? Yeah, you played this weekend, and you
Yeah,
didn't win. What happened there?
bottled it.
What happened there?
Oh dear. We had a reduced squad from what we normally would, so there was only who's there from the first? There's only like 2 or 3 first team players there, so we're missing like half the squad. Who we lose to? Oh, we lost to Rangers as well. We went down to like a overtime set and got like triple hit off the bat, where it like missed block into the player next to him, came over to me, and it was spinning so much and came out of my hand. And then we played Meteors in the third, fourth game as well because they'd lost to Derby. Yeah, that was just a rough event. But yeah, like he's mentioned, I've had so much on since the start of this year. The start of this year, I was feeling really burned out and demotivated for the first time since I started competitive dodgeball, and then to have UDO, WEC in Belgium, Mexico, Vienna Calling, and am I missing one?
League.
But like League and British Open and a bunch of other things in there. I've had so much on. I've had one free weekend off this year. It's been so packed, and I don't really feel too burned out now because it's kind of that period's over. But at the start of it and towards the middle, I was just everything. Well, I didn't really feel physically told. I had like I say, a bit of a rotator cuff pain, but just like more mentally, just felt so burned out and exhausted. And I just didn't have the motivation for it. But now everything's done. We've got a nice big gap till Worlds. We've still got some things like DCO, but now we've got an actual period where I can properly plan out a proper build up to Worlds and properly get back into the flow of things. I'm quite excited for that.
Awesome. So before we get into that last period, I want to get back into that last set or second to last set against Anarchy in the men's final, because that I remember back at UDO where you had your semi-final against them, and there was that you were down one set and or drew even, and then there was the overtime set, and then there was the double hit or the not double hit or the triple hit, whichever it was. So you had that really, really dramatic, really close game in the semifinal at UDO against Anarchy, and now you got your chance to sort of do a comeback, a revenge comeback on them, and you went really close again, and you had that last second to last set. Talk me through those last few seconds.
Yeah, before I start on this, I'd like to highlight I am now 0-7 against Adam Hill, I believe,
Wow.
through like Euros, UDO, well, whatever else. But yeah, I beat the rest of them like Kareem and Johnny and that, and like
Yeah,
mixed and whatever, but
the
not
big
Adam.
shit.
Yeah, yeah, we came really close to beating them at UDO with again just a random kind of mixed English team with MK second wind. Looking back at that game, it probably shouldn't have been that close. We had a few fortunate reffing calls that kind of gave us a couple of extra points. So looking back, it shouldn't have been so close. But it was again just a really we really pushed the level towards the end of that game as well, and just got so unfortunate with like a double hit and not realizing it's a double hit and then just losing the set on time. But this Vienna Calling, that second to last set was something I've always kind of envisioned as happening to win a world's final and being like, yeah, that was a real peak moment. We were down 11-15 with a minute left, I think, and it was maybe a 6v4 as well. We were down,
Mm.
and just somehow, I don't think it really made any outlandish mistakes, but we just made all the hits and just like I hit a pre-throw. I think there was a catch. Then it went down to like a 2v4 or 2v5, and then McGee for the first time in his life throws like just somehow loses focus. I think everyone does it at some point where you just throw a bad catch to throw a set. So McGee didn't really throw a bad throw. It was quite safe if you look at it, and it should have hit my like ankles or so. But yeah, split my legs on that one. Fished. For the past 4 or 5 years that I've been playing competitive dodgeball, I've always done those fishes where it's like above you or below your legs or off to the side, like just in warm up and training and everything. And against lower teams, it works really well to just batter them without battering them, so you don't have to just smash them with the balls. You can just fish for everything. So I have practiced that fish quite a lot. And so McGee throws this ball at my ankles. I spread my legs, catch that one, and I never do leap of fate as well, because back 3 years ago at the UDO we won with Mosh. That tournament, 5 minutes into the tournament, I did my first proper like international suicide and rolled my ankle landing it.
Oh, nice.
So I played that entire tournament with a rolled ankle and still won it. But yeah, that's why I kind of avoid suicides, because I do have like the flexibility in the arm for it, but I just choose not to out of not thinking it's a great idea. So yeah, fish for this ball from McGee at my ankles, and then saw like 8 seconds left on the clock and just thought, not enough time to get a proper 2 ball here. I'll just jump for it. Managed to get a fake off, jumped and hit him on the shoulder, and that's the first time I've properly cheered as well for anything really, because normally I just like end the set, and that's in my mind. If you win the set, it's kind of that's happened and went to plan and is expected. So it's just like, yeah, let's go again next set.
Cool.
But yeah, I was quite excited for that because it felt like the first time we were properly going to be like the first team to beat Anarchy, and the first time I would properly, I don't know, hit that level, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I went and blindfolded on the next set.
Yeah. That was it was like a building up to the perfect climax, and then you just stepped on the line, and we were like, fuck.
I'm so heartbroken about
Everyone
that.
felt that, yeah. So
Yeah.
we really would have loved to play you in the final, but we were also happy to play Anarchy in that final and run it back after that disaster in Mexico. And I really wanted to try that one again on our home turf. But this time we had our young players, but we didn't have Basti because he fell ill and couldn't support us the whole weekend, which also took a toll on my body because I played way more than I should have because he just couldn't um, take his share in that. And so we played a 17-year-old opposite opposite Kelly, and it worked wonders. And we had a really,
Did well.
really, really good final, and just we dominated Adam and Johnny for a long part. Mikey, who demolished us in Mexico. We really figured him out for that game at least, and he wasn't a factor. And then just Josh steps up, who is usually just there to retrieve for Anarchy, and just takes 1 point after the other and kills us completely. I think I've watched that game back, and I think without Josh, we're up by 8-4 at the worst and 10-2 at best. But
Wow.
Josh basically made it into a 7-7 at halftime. And that was the first time where we started to also feel a little bit of fatigue because we just couldn't change anyone and we just had six players and no one to rotate in really because the other ones are just a little bit too young for that level of play. And yeah, we had a really tough second half, battled through, and then we also found ourselves in that 11-15 situation. And I tried. I saw your example and was like, okay, just make a catch. Since I'm really not good at fishing, I just used my knee pads, shout out Rebad, and just caught Adam like I usually do. But usually I use my hands. This time I needed my knee pads for it. Very dramatic, and we somehow managed to get into that set again. And then I just took your example as well and caught Murphy and stepped on the line. And then we sort of drew that last set because no, we lost it even because Joey had to go for a last second drop catch attempt and sadly fumbled that one as well. And we also couldn't have that happy end and final climactic moment. But also it was such an emotional game. I really lost my voice in that game, and I'm exceptionally proud of that final because that was a really good game. And I watched it back and I'm still happy with that performance. We didn't get the win we wanted against Anarchy, but at least we didn't bottle it and play like we did in Mexico. So I can live with that result from a nasty side. And yeah, from our end, it was a really cool tournament. I really enjoyed the game against you guys in the mixed, which was also just a struggle from the very beginning. I think the first time I played you was at UDO like 2 years ago with Olpa Gold, but as you said, probably we never shared the same wing, and you always were on the left side. Which you prefer? Do you prefer to play on the left or on the right side?
I've kind of always played everywhere, including middle. Recently, because of my shoulder, I have been preferring the right side just because my throw works better from like right to
Mm.
left rather than that left to right. Like I said, I can't do that Brett snap off to the right as well as you can. So I like having the the control on the game, being able to call, but in terms of personal ability, the right side is better for me.
Okay, because you switched over, and I really yeah like the first time I played it against you in UDO, which was this year. We had a really that was one of our best mixed performances I think we ever had because we played you guys in the quarterfinals and that should be a very close game and it really wasn't. And just
Destroyed.
that was I feel from a nasty perspective that was one of the best games we ever had, followed up by one of the worst in the semifinals against Wolfpack. But we were just riding too high after that performance where we're like, okay, no one can beat us. But that's when Dodgeball pulls you back into reality. But I really enjoy like you give me a very different obstacle than most. It's like a little bit like playing against Tamash, just a little bit more faster, more athletic Tamash with maybe a tiny bit less intimidating throw and fake because his fake is still up to this day, I think, one of the most intimidating throws fakes out there. And yours is just intimidating because it's always there and your release is really fast, but you just don't have the complete presence of him on the court. But that was a really, really fun semifinal in the mixed category. And yeah, I'm very much there. You can you can give me your perspective as well if you want.
Yeah, no. Every time I've played you, it's felt like I've run out of options, which is so. It's I don't say rare, but it is. I've never outside of playing you guys. I felt like I never don't have answers to something, but like you and Basti run at us on those wings at the UDO you beat us in mixed. I just had no answer for, and neither did the rest of the team, like BP and Ryan Ellis and Jamie. Just none of us could do anything. That's kind of a little bit how I felt in our mixed game here at Vienna as well. Is where I expected different things to happen, and then you just broke my expectations of it, and I just couldn't do much, I guess. So I suppose you I probably don't want to tell you this, but you are probably the main player that I need to work towards beating out of everyone at the moment because, like I say, it's just 3 performances in a row where I just feel like I haven't been able to do anything. Whereas like against Adam Hill, I feel like I know what he's going to do, and I have the answers, and it's just not quite executed, whether it's on my level or the team's part. Like in Mexico, we had quite a disappointing game against them as well, and that just felt not necessarily that I didn't have the answers, but as a team, it felt like we all didn't have the answer in that game. So yeah, it's been a challenge to play against you. So I look forward to developing some new stuff at Worlds for you.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's been an absolute challenge to play against you as well, but also a pleasure. And I feel like I really had good games against you. And in a way, you sort of your style is good for me because you play very aggressive and you are used to rely on your fake and your pressure a lot. And I can work with that and I can step into that pressure and have a fast enough release to punish that if you overextend it by a little too much. So that has worked out until now. So I'm looking forward to what you cook up for Bangkok, and maybe I have to figure something out as well. But it's really tough to teach a very old horse some new tricks. But I'm gonna try. Maybe catch you by surprise with a drop catch, like an MCO
Nice.
special. But we'll see. All right, Jack. Other than that, from my side, I'm really happy with this conversation. I love that we got into your throwing mechanics and your like obsession with really figuring out minute details. And so I'm really looking forward to what you cook up next. And I'm also looking forward to playing you hopefully at TCO with a different lineup in different divisions. That will be fun on your home turf. Any parting words or any last topics you want to get into?
I suppose we've covered quite a lot, really. I've always asked players, no matter how little or how much experience they have, for advice for me. So if you're going to give me some advice for anything in terms of like ability or whatever else, in or outside of the game, what would you say?
That's a very good question. Well, so obviously, I have seen a bit of you. I have played you at least twice for an intense game. I could give you personal advice against me, but I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna hold back on that until after Bangkok, maybe. Maybe you figured it out on your own, and maybe not, which would be better. But in general, I'm really, really impressed with your game. Like I really like your presence on court and your pressure. I'm a big believer in working for the team and making a huge impact as a player for your team. And I think you're a player who makes a lot of pressure and a lot of impact for his team. You obviously have all the skills. Your throw is great. Your catching ability and your movement is really weird and different than other people's, but it's very effective and has a little bit of a swagger to it, which not many people have. So definitely hold on to that because that's what your fans are looking for now. And in terms of tips, that's I usually always have tips for players, but for you, I really don't see a lot. Probably work on your suicides because I've seen the last one and it was cool because you basically did a fake in your run up, and then from your fake, you basically jumped and still managed to hit him um, against a different opponent who doesn't just crouch down against the suicide, which is a stupid thing to do. For everyone else listening, if someone leap of faiths you in the last few seconds, just shoot them out of the air. Don't hide behind a block ball. That's not a smart move. So that's not for you again. But your leap of faith looked decent. So I would say don't burn yourself out by being overly obsessed over everything, because I think like dodgeball, you can study a lot and you can try to find solution for everything, but then again, if you over prepare or if you expect things, especially at the top level, really good players are really good because they can adapt in situations and can make the right reads of things you do or teams do. And I think I'm definitely one of those players who really excels in making adaptations in the situation. And so I think if you over prepare, it's sometimes a a hindrance as well, because you can rely on expectations. And dodgeball is such a fast paced sport with so many different variables that you always have to be ready for everything and be open for everything. And so knowing stuff is really good, and knowing tendencies and figuring people out, but expecting things is probably not a good thing, because you can't recalibrate fast enough in certain situations. So it can be maybe exploited by a few players out there. But apart from that, at this point, there's really nothing I can tell you, I think. And there's definitely a few things I will try to learn from your approach to the game, and also your movement mechanics are something that seems efficient and smooth. So that's always something I'm looking at, because the more efficient you are, the less hard it is on your body. And so I think that is something you've learned over the last few tournaments. So yeah, it's been absolutely cool playing against you, and also really cool talking to you for a while now. So I'm looking forward to the next opportunity to do both.
You too. Yeah, hopefully we can get a good chat in person, not just a gala next time as well.
Yes,
But yeah,
definitely.
thank you for all the tips and everything. I'll definitely take it on board.
Perfect. Thank you, Jack. All right, everyone. Then keep throwing those balls. Try not to get caught, and take care. Stay healthy. Jack, have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everything Dodgeball podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Leitinger. And tonight I have a new guest on the podcast, Mr. Jack Leche. Fuck. And okay, I'm going to do the.
Oh no.
Okay, we're going to run this from the top. So I'm here with Jack Leche, formerly known to myself as Jack Leche, apparently, but I've heard a lot of names and probably you have heard many more. So, Jack, tell me a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Dodgeball.